I am Michael King. I'm a plein air and studio painter. I'm also the founder of Artful. So our inspirational interview today is with Michael Orwick. He's a professional oil painter working out of Portland, Oregon. Aims to capture the effects of light and atmosphere of a location as light transforms the ordinary or even the beautiful into the exception. Thank you very much for doing this interview, Michael. It's very nice to meet you.
Yeah, it's great to meet you, Michael. This is going to be confusing for people.
No doubt. All the questions will be for you, without a doubt.
Well, thank you for inviting me to do this. This is going to be fun.
Absolutely. Now, I'm going to scroll through a selection of some of your works, and while I do that, if you can just introduce yourself in your own words, that'd be fantastic.
All right. Well, Michael Orwick, born and raised in Oregon, kind of lived around different spots here in Oregon. I went to college to study illustration, did that for a very, very short time, and quickly got into painting, mostly landscapes. I do have some figurative and stuff like that, but primarily landscapes. Living in the Pacific Northwest, I'm so attracted to atmosphere, soft light, glowing light. I really do enjoy fog and haze. And I think maybe the illustration background still squeaks in because I really like trying to find a narrative within my landscapes and trying to create, an emotion, a mood, and then kind of inviting the viewer to kind of finish the story and make it their own.
As all artists we do, right? We always try to create that story that brings someone in, don't we?
I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I understand you're going to try to paint while we do these questions. Do you want to switch over to the other camera first, or do you want to go through a couple of questions?
I can switch right over. We can get started. Yeah, it's going to be quick, 1 hour. Great. All right. So I've got a painting started. This is kind of an older painting that's been kind of got started and for whatever reason got set aside. I know I heard you asking some of the other artists in previous interviews about if they work on multiple paintings at a time.
Yes.
And I probably more than anybody I've ever met work on probably like 15 paintings at a time.
Oh, that many. Wow.
Yeah, probably. I like to kind of walk into the studio and just kind of look around and say, who wants to play today? Who's ready for the next stages of the painting. These small ones, these kind of more tonalistic pieces are oftentimes almost a reward. If you saw earlier, I had that great big vineyard painting behind me that I've been working on. I do a lot of commissions. I do a lot of large scale work for galleries and stuff. And kind of at the end of the day, a lot of times I'll do these kind of little tonal paintings, almost for practice, almost just because I really enjoy splashing paint around. And I also really, really enjoy working in values, the lights and the darks. And then what happens is, sometimes I'll work all the way through, alla prima, doing, the values and then quickly covering them with the color. So I don't have to let them dry. But a lot of times they kind of do. And I'll have a stack of these that I can just kind of get back to. In fact, the last couple of times I've been out plein air painting, I've just been doing little quick value studies with just kind of acrylic paint. And then these during the winter, because just like you, we get a nice long cold winter. And I'll be stuck in the studio. I can go back in and color these up and have a lot of fun. So for me, values are kind of the most important thing. And then I really get to play with color.
No doubt. Now that'd be really interesting because you'd be so much more freer to just interpret the scene than to worry about the color scheme that you're going for, the color of this, the color of that, where you can just focus solely on values.
Absolutely.
That's pretty cool. I'm gonna have to steal that because I've never done that before. Plein air
black and white. Yeah, those were with acrylic, which that was a first for me. Normally I do fast matte oils from Gamblin paints,
Yep.
or regular oils, and in the summer they'll dry so fast in your car anyways. But anyways, I just kind of wanted to, while we're talking, I kind of wanted to be demonstrating kind of how I might build one of these up. And again, just for fun, I'm just going to be kind of scribbling colors around. I'll be wiping them back off and just kind of experimenting and playing.
For sure.
And I really should have maybe come up with more of a idea of what colors, but I think I'll kind of keep it with kind of a George Ennis, kind of an early tonalist kind of sensibility, but I will be bringing in probably some greens, some blues or grays or purples or whatever else. Let's just see what happens.
Okay, sounds good. So my first question for you, Michael, though, is like I looked at a lot of your work and it seems that you have a tendency to incorporate a lot of luminous lighting. So I'm curious if your references generally show that, or it's something that you plan for more than anything.
I definitely go luminosity hunting, or, I'm definitely I love to get up at sunrise. Well, Yeah, I love to get up at sunrise and I love to paint at sunset. I kind of find that to be like, as far as plein air is concerned, kind of the extreme sport version
Yeah.
of because the light is so fast, especially at sunrise, because you're going from dark where you can't actually see what you're really painting. You got to get out there early to, the beautiful light, and then bang, you're done. Whereas if you go out at sunset, you kind of can guess where, that you think the sun is going to set, kind of, and you can build up a lot of the values, and the design. So you get a little more time with sunset than you do with sunrise.
Yeah.
This is just some Indian yellow that I'm scrubbing in. Speaking of luminosity, I kind of think Indian yellows, depending on the brand, that can be, you can see how it just really made that kind of glowy. And that's just kind of be in there for a little while. I'm going to let that sit. And this painting, this design here is just out of my head. So save anybody that. But I do live amongst a bunch of vineyards areas around here, as well as a lot of wetlands. In fact, even the little tiny neighborhoods, because I live kind of in suburbia here, even the little neighborhoods, they have little parks that if you ignore the houses, you can really, they're just these beautiful little wetland protected areas. There's a number of those around me. So within a couple miles, I can find just these really kind of nice little interesting wetlands. Again, as long as I take maybe the Costco out of the background or Nike or whatever else.
Now, you brought up Indian yellow, so I'm going to have to ask this question. And also looking at your work, you have incorporated a lot of colors that have high chroma in them. And to achieve this, you can surround colors with grays and neutrals and whatnot. But I'm thinking your pigments are more of the man-made pigments, and kind of like the quins, the Indian yellows, the phthalos. Why do you choose these chromatic pigments over the old standards?
Because I can make the old standards, or at least something that mimics it really easily. So I use and I teach what's called, what all artists call a limited palette. So it's 2 yellows, two reds. Typically, I only have 1 red up here now. 2 blues and white is primarily what I teach, but I do invite artists to bring in other colors. And I have over on this side what I consider my guest colors, and that will often have some sort of a brown, like a burnt umber or a transparent Indian or earth red. And lately, Payne's Gray has been making it onto my palette. I just find it a really beautiful, cool, neutralizing color. I'm not afraid of other colors, and I'm not afraid of earth colors, but I definitely want to keep in mind that they're shortcut colors. And the reason that I picked the 2 yellows, 2 reds, and 2 blues that I have, which are typically like a lemon yellow and an Indian yellow, so a very cool greenish yellow and a very orangey yellow. And then I'll usually have like a cadmium red light, which I don't have up here, and quinacridone red, you were correct on that, ultramarine blue and manganese blue hue. What I'm looking for is the most bang for the buck, the color that can do the most. Like a lot of people say, well, I don't like quinacridone, I only want alizarin. And I can quickly show them, I can take my quinacridone and I can make it into an alizarin really easily.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I can never make an alizarin into a quinacridone. So that's kind of the case with a lot of these colors. Is there colors that are pretty extreme, and I can make most all other colors, or at least, close enough. The biggest bang for the buck.
Yeah, gotcha. Now, I noticed during some of your recordings from your Facebook Live sessions that you've done, and also now watching you paint, you're also very scrubby and you keep everything really soft at the beginning. Can you explain why that is so intentional?
I'm keeping it thin. I love the transparency of oil paints. Most of my oils, besides the cadmium colors, are pretty transparent. And I like that if I build up the thickness, or leave them thicker, that I can make them opaque or add white or add the cadmiums, they become opaque. But I love that ability for the light to come hit the surface and come back out, like bounce back and create that glow. I think that's probably one of the main things people say about my paintings, is that they're often quite glowy or luminous. And I just am super attracted to that. I was a big Maxfield Parrish, kid growing up. That was probably one of the art books my family had. Yeah, I just really have always been attracted to that.
Yeah, and that comes back to the color use as well, for sure, because of their transparency and high pigment load, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
So in thinking about this picture, I've kind of got these interesting trees here. So I'm probably going to kind of reshape a little bit here. Maybe bring in a little brown and make this so it's not so regular. Kind of change some of this shape a little bit, so it's just a little more interesting, hopefully.
Interesting shapes is the hallmark of an interesting painting, is it not?
I believe that is the case, and that's probably where I get myself in the most trouble, is I just kind of start painting and then all of a sudden realize, oh, I need to get better shapes, more interesting shapes.
What you're painting on now is what? That's about a 12 by 16, I'm guessing, right?
I believe that's true. Yeah.
Okay, but I see a lot of your stuff is actually quite big. Like five, I think I saw one that's maybe 5 by 6 feet, maybe. Okay, so what are the challenges you find working so big?
A space. Consistency across the surface is always tough. Yeah, it's not that great that when you finally step back, you realize that, you know, your colors are changing or your values are not staying consistent as you're moving across the space. So consistency, storage, selling them can be a bit of a trick. I really do enjoy painting large. I really have a good time with that. And this is just a cheap little chip brush. I just find these to be so beautifully messy and organic. I've heard in some of your other previous interviews, artists talking about that once you get to a certain stage and you've kind of, I don't want to say mastered or whatever, but you've become comfortable with the, you know, typical flat paintbrush, it becomes almost like a challenge to get back to really organic, loose brush strokes. And you have, you know, and it's so fun to just kind of let things evolve and develop. And I don't do these so much in my, you know, my commissions and even a lot of my gallery work, but when it's painting for myself and just having fun, I just really like to see what happens if I push messy brushwork and organic, you know, really try to get into the organics level of things.
Well, I can see that being a big advantage too when it's everything scraggly and large and hard to manipulate. It makes for a more organic painting and less worry about details.
Right. So yeah, as my brushes get older and more torn up, they become some of my favorite brushes, and I'll be using some of those probably towards the end, just to kind of mess things up and rough things up, and to make, you know, any areas that I became a little bit fussy about less so.
Again, looking at some of your paintings, I can see at the end stages, I think everything, well, the brushes strokes, I think, become a lot more deliberate and a lot more focused, right?
Right. And you'll see too that what I'm trying to do is to kind of not only have a conversation with you guys, but also to have a conversation with this painting. And again, this is when I'm just kind of having fun. You know, I don't have any preliminary sketches. It's kind of out of my head. It's kind of like that magic of when we were kids and we look at the Polaroid picture and it would just slowly materialize in front of you. I love that. I love just seeing, if I do this, what happens? If I do that, what happens? And having that just fun conversation with the piece and just kind of, you know, what do you want now? How do you like this? And some of these paintings will go straight into the dustbin, into the garbage. And other of them will end up, you know, some of my favorite work, maybe not sellable, but I'll have that enjoyment of them. So again, a lot of times these are kind of my reward paintings for a day spent painting and getting the work done that needs to get done. You know, the commission or the piece for the gallery show or whatever it is.
Yeah, you save the fun for the end, right?
Yeah, exactly. Do what you got to do so you can do what you want to do.
Now, you mentioned plein air as well before, so obviously you're a plein air painter to some extent. How much, though, do you think that has influenced your painting over the years? Not only that, though, it's your pieces that you do from your imagination.
You know, no matter what, if it's from a photo or from my imagination or from sketches outdoors, whatever it is, you're always changing it. At least I am. Again, don't let the facts get in the way of a good story, right? So you're always getting information. You're always getting references in your head. You're always collecting. We're all collectors as artists, you know? And so by being outside, you know, it's nice to go out and watch the sunset, but it's a whole nother beast, a whole nother animal to get outside and watch it from the beginning to the absolute end and paint it, and to really observe, to really look into its minutia, and to observe how the sunset absolutely changes from minute to minute. You know, just like anybody that does plein air, there's a lot of times where I start and all of a sudden, you know, something amazing happens. A cloud passes perfectly or whatever else, and I'm not going to change my painting probably for that, but I've got that information tucked away into my data bank, right? My mental data bank. I heard somebody call it brain air painting. You're out there getting the information, and then you can kind of use that later. And so it's twofold, getting that information, but also the whole thing about doing values and then painting over them later. That came about from plein air. A good buddy of mine named Don Bishop, who everybody should look up, beautiful tonalist work as well as really colorful, nice work. Buddy of mine here in Oregon. He, when I was just kind of starting out in the plein air world, kind of very politely over my shoulder one day maybe it wasn't so polite, I don't remember, said, you know what, you need to focus on design. You know, you're just getting ahead of yourself. I asked him what he meant and how I should go about doing that. And he basically suggested that I work with either a very, very limited palette or black and white. And so that summer, I basically challenged myself to do just value study, plein air work. And by the end of the summer, probably had, I don't know, maybe 50, 60 little 8x10s and all little sizes of value work. It really did help to be able to go out into the field where it's complete information overload, you know, all the beautiful colors, all the, you know, everything going on, and just say, you know what, I'm here for the values, I'm here for the design. To just really focus in on that was such a gift. You know, of course, I felt like I was kind of being tortured. And, you know, when you're out there in the field, you know, the fields are golden or the flowers are blooming or whatever else. Of course, you feel like you're really missing out. But that winter, like a squirrel collecting nuts, I had all these paintings that I could go back in and then really play with the color. And I didn't use my photo references on them. I just went crazy. And what I really learned during that stage was that you can really, really, really get away with wild colors and really help tell your narrative. As long as your values hold true and make sense, people will go with it.
Yeah, I have to agree with that 100%. Working in just in black and white, did you notice the difference between your first one and, say, your last one of the season?
100%. So
Yeah.
I started with black and white. And by the end of the season, the paintings were more like you saw this at the beginning. I was using a lot more of the kind of, I really ended up using earth red and ultramarine blue and white. And what that allowed for me to do is get some warmth and some cool. You know, it makes a gorgeous black. And you can make
Absolutely.
a warm black or a very cool black. And then even towards the end of that, I started incorporating some yellows. So anyways, I would end up with a lot of these kind of warmer underpaintings, which I really enjoyed. And that greatly affected the whole trajectory of my career.
Exactly right. Yeah, I guess that'd be a really great exercise for those people who are struggling with not just painting outside, but paintings in general that just seem to fail all the time, right? Start doing everything in black and white and coming up with a good design that stands on its own first.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things about teaching is, you know, I have to go back every year and redo these value studies with my students, you know, as I'm demoing them and everything else. One of my favorite quotes, in fact, I have it pinned up here on the wall, is, let me read it here. Greatness is consistency on the fundamentals. I'm not going to say I'm great by any stretch, but whenever I get ahead of myself and try to shortcut or forget about the fundamentals, I get punched in the face by paintings all the time. And it's taking that little bit more time, coming back to design, to the value structure, to the underlying large elements, that my paintings are far more successful, far more often. You know, I don't have time for that. I got to get to it.
And no offense, but that makes me very happy to hear that you have your struggles and your failures.
Yeah, I definitely do. Yeah, those 15 paintings that I was saying that I was working on at a time, those are ones that are in poor shape somewhere, sitting in a pile over here. That, you know, I might just end up painting over them. I find that when I'm painting on so many paintings at a time, that becomes kind of a self-editing process where I'm just like, well, you know, it's been a year. I never got back to you. So something's wrong. Either design wasn't as interesting as I thought, or my idea wasn't as fully baked.
And do you sometimes just abandon them altogether, rework or repaint all of them? Yeah.
I will paint over like 60 paintings in a fell swoop, you know, throw away a number. And then I'm the eternal optimist. And I'm very much that golden retriever and up, you know, ooh, squirrel, you know, everything's exciting and everything. Yeah. I can't wait to get to the next thing all the time. I've just kind of come to terms with, you know, the ADHD side of me is just like, you know what, let's just keep creating, let's keep starting. And then we'll let the inevitable editing process happen naturally. You know, I keep thinking I'm going to get away from that. I'm going to grow out of that. I'm going to become a more mature painter, but it just doesn't seem to happen.
More part of your process now than anything else, right?
Yeah, maybe it's just in there now.
So we also talked about your large paintings before, and your plein air stuff. That's probably got to be, I don't know, no more than 12 by 16. How do you go about enlarging your plein air works in the studio, if you do at all?
I just kind of do.
You don't have a set process for anything, or
no set process? No, because it's going to be changed. You know, there's never been a time where I literally just finished a plein air painting and then said I'm going to make this exact painting bigger. So again, it'll just be elements from it. Yeah, I was just out plein air painting sunrise in the Columbia Gorge this week, or a couple of days ago. I don't know if you can see that. It's just super fast, just splashing in the areas. But what I like the most, you know, is actually just the very cool color palette. I did actually 2 paintings that morning. Woke up and really just kind of went crazy. And you can see the first one right when the sun was coming up over the top. Not a very good painting at all, but I was just trying to capture the crazy bright sky. And I kind of hate this one. It looks, pretty rough and crazy, but I was just trying to get those colors. And it was just amazing to me that within 10 minutes of the sun just going up, how cool everything got, and the mist or the fog must have kind of settled in. So I would take like elements of that, like that color, and bring that into something later. Or I do a lot of pictures of the Columbia River Gorge because it's just such an amazing place that I live 35 minutes away from. And and a lot of Oregonians want that view in their house.
Yeah, so it's just a matter of taking multiple plein air pieces and making it into a larger studio piece that tells more of a story.
I am jealous of artists who have, I don't want to call it formulaic, but real systematic ways of working, and it's really replicable. I don't seem to have that. I seem to have more of a playful approach to my painting. I find that I need it to stay interesting and stay loose and as fun as possible. Painting's too hard to take very serious. It will crush your soul.
Now, it's been, believe it or not, 30 minutes, so we're going to open the floor to questions, and I have a few in the chat already. So someone's just asking, what is your palette made of? It looks like glass?
Yeah, this is just a cutting board.
Oh,
I
interesting.
spray painted the back of it. So the cutting side with the texture is on the back. I get these from Bed Bath & Beyond, I think is the name of the store. And they come in packs of 3. So on the side that you would cut has texture. And so I can paint that side gray. And then it's a tempered glass, so it's really hardcore. And these things cost like $10.
That's such a great idea.
They have little feet on them, so I just knocked those feet off. Yeah, my palette here, my big palette, just a workbench, with all the tools, but instead I have all my brushes and everything. It's a Husky workbench. And the same thing, I just got a big sheet of tempered glass that I spray paint paint the underside gray. So most all my palettes are the same value of gray.
Yep.
Which helps me to see the values and stuff a little better, especially when I'm getting into the colors.
What medium are you using right now?
I'm using no medium.
Okay, so he is painting in oils if anybody's interested.
Oh, yeah, oils. So oils, but I do paint with acrylics from time to time, especially for my underpaintings. And I've been experimenting with that in my teaching more and more, just because I like to teach about glazing. I'm really into glazing, and I think oil paints have so many different amazing aspects that are underutilized. Everybody's all about the alla prima, finishing their painting all in one sitting. But I think we lose out on so much when we neglect the transparency of the oil paints, because we got the transparency and the opacity. You've got so much amazing things that oil paints can do. The old masters really utilized that a lot. So I love it. And when you're teaching, you can't glaze over an oil painting for a long time. It's got to be really, really dry. In my teaching, by doing acrylics, I can then demo glazing even with oils over that pretty quickly. Usually it'll be the next day if it's a workshop. But if I need to, I can glaze into it within an hour. I just don't know how long that painting is going to last, because it's not enough for the acrylics just to dry. They actually should cure.
The next one says, do you always mix your colors as you go versus mixing ahead?
No, I love to mix ahead.
Oh, interesting.
I just didn't hear, and I'm just this is more the playful side. I'm just kind of responding, seeing what's happening. So here, I wouldn't even know what to pre-mix because I had no idea what the color palette was really going to be. So now I'm just kind of responding. There's a lot of fun too, but no, typically like in my large work and my more finished off work, I will definitely try to pre-mix my colors. And if I'm plein air painting and I have if I'm going to go do sunset, I will often pre-mix a lot of the colors as well, if I'm kind of guessing, if it's a little bit smoky or whatever else, you can begin to kind of guess some of the colors and where they might go. And then you can always just bend them, you can always just doctor those up a little bit pretty quickly, as need be. So a lot of times I'll mix big piles of colors, which I will call my mother colors or octopussing the colors. So I would pick okay, I want some green, I need some yellows, and then some darks. So I might pre-mix those piles. And then from there, create little arms of warmer, cooler, greener, blue, or whatever. And so all the colors have a nice harmony to them. Harmony is really important for me in my paintings.
But that's a great idea, though. If you plan on painting a sunset painting, pre-mix some colors all beforehand and then just shift them, make everything a lot faster, won't it?
Right. And again, even when I'm out in plein air, still doesn't mean I'm really slavish to the colors at hand, unless I'm really there to try to make a challenge for myself. Oftentimes, as I'm driving out to do the plein air painting, I will kind of mentally set some challenges. Like I may set a challenge if I can only use certain kinds of brushes, or a challenge of, each painting's got to be 15 minutes, or a challenge of, I'm going to use, I'm going to take away Indian yellow because I've been overusing that color lately and it's become a crutch.
Gotcha. Yeah, you're not following the colors like you say, but would you say that you follow the temperature more? Temperature and value rather than color?
Valued structure. The lights, darks often more. Strongly urge people to take trees out that don't need to be there. Even whole mountain ranges, sometimes everything's a jumping off point. Everything's just some inspiration. And I've learned that by going out with, painters I greatly respect and just painting with them, talking with them. And then you finally look over at their painting and you're like, I don't even know what you're looking at. What's doing? And it's just, they're out there just being inspired and picking up elements. And there's so much liberation. We set up so many artificial parameters and boundaries on ourselves and on our work that just aren't necessary. And so just trying to remember that all the time when I'm out there. It's just, that proverbial artist licenses, we all have it. Have fun. One thing I like to say to my students is that, there's two different types of painters. There's the reporter, the journalist, right? Just the facts, ma'am. Out there just collecting data, just trying to replicate. And that's awesome. I'm all about those artists, but that artist is not me. I prefer the poetic. I prefer the, just trying to get out and make a beautiful painting or convey a nice mood or whatever it is, whatever kind of scene I want to paint. So yeah, the journalist versus the poet. And I've given myself that permission, over the last number of years to just go, what, for me, it's about the poetry. It might come off overly romantic sometimes or overly gloomy or, whatever kind of poem it is I want to see in my painting. But that's fine. I'm attracted to that style of work more.
Now, a question, going back to your old brushes there, what kind of did you start with? I assume they're just old hog's hair bristles.
Yeah, these are all just hog hair flats. That's my primary brush. Is flats, size 6 and 8, all sorts of brands.
Yeah, and you also referred to one as a chip brush. What exactly is a chip brush?
You'd buy at a hardware store.
Oh, okay, kind of like a cut-in brush almost.
Cutting brush, yeah, that's another word for it. Yeah, they cost like 30 cents. When I buy them in bulk, I buy each size, I think comes in a box of 36.
Oh, that's
and
hilarious.
So the great thing is if I'm done here and want to get down to my family and don't want to clean, I can just chuck these. But again, the older they get and the more beat up they get, sometimes they just get brilliant.
Oh, for sure.
My favorite brushes are these crazy.
Oh, for grasses, I could see that just being amazing.
Yeah, let's check that out. Let's see if we can even see it.
What surface would you say are best for practicing on?
I prefer panels, but that's partly because I paint pretty thinly, like you noticed, or a lot of my painting surface will be pretty thin. I'll have a combination of thin and thick here in just a little bit as I'm building up the paint. But the thin areas on canvas, for me, it will often, when they're photographed, have this kind of pixelated look. Sorry, that's the word.
Just because of the texture, right?
Yeah, exactly. And, canvas can be highly regular. If you're painting with linen or something that's more irregular, that probably wouldn't play as big a role. But I do like the smooth surface. I will inevitably almost always re-gesso mine with student grade Liquitex gesso, which I really like because of it's just absorbent enough for me to stain the canvas, get some of that stuff in. Even when I buy an expensive panel that's beautifully gessoed, I'll usually put a coat or two of it on there.
And a Liquitex gesso, I guess that would be an acrylic gesso then.
It is, yeah. I way prefer an acrylic underpainting, a gesso, over an oil primed. Just again for the slickness and everything else.
So I guess this next question pretty much answered with what you just said in terms of what substrate would you recommend for plein air paintings, and a specific brand, or just make your own?
I mean, now I just kind of make my own, but when I started, I was using the Raymar canvas. But again, I kind of am getting away from a lot of the canvas. So now I just get birch panels cut to pieces, or I'll cut them or whatever else, and then just gessoing them. I don't even put canvas on there. It's just gesso.
And the beauty of that is, though, they're so cheap, right? You can go out and ruin 10 of them and have one good one, right?
Cheaper for sure. And and they're durable. I mean, I stack tons of them into painting boxes or in my storage area.
You are someone who really needs to be inspired to paint a scene. Are you looking for a particular story, or are you just looking for some sort of sense of something?
I definitely have kind of a subject matter. I'm going to turn this light off and see what that does. I really, really, really like water. I love creeks and marshes. I grew up catching frogs, fishing, and salamanders and all the aquatic things. It's one of my favorites. I'm always attracted to that. So marshes, wetlands, creeks, streams, rivers definitely hold a special place in my heart. I also grew up on a farm, and so farmland, rolling hills, things like that. But yeah, like all those places that I just mentioned, or vineyards or whatever, all look better to me under certain lights, and I love the dusk and I love the dawn, the golden light. So I'm often looking for that. There's something for a subject, and then there's something probably more importantly to me will often be the lighting and the atmosphere and the mood kind of the place.
So that explains all your vibrant colors. You never really get into like foggy scenes or anything like that?
Oh, I definitely do.
Okay.
But I'll even make those kind of more vibrant and warmed up. Here's a really foggy one that's really foggy. It's almost become minimalistic. And this, I was lucky enough that our extended family has a cabin only about an hour away. And this is what it looks like in the morning sometimes. The sun rises. I love fog, actually. So I do quite a few foggy, kind of moody.
Now that you're working on a painting, if we weren't here, when do you know that you're finished? Or do you consider anything ever finished?
No, nothing's ever really finished. My gallery out at the coast here laughs that I will literally just pull a painting off and just start painting on it in the gallery.
Oh, you're kidding me.
With the frame on it and everything. Yeah, I've done that a number of times because everything looks different, right, in your studio, and especially if you're kind of painting for a show and you're kind of under a deadline. Sometimes you got to let them out a little faster maybe than you'd hope, and then you get there and the lighting there is different, or again, my optimistic personality just, oh, that's my best painting ever, and then you get a little bit of separation from it, and then you're just like, nope, that is not in fact a good painting at all, or whatever. It needs some love. It's nice that the new varnishes, you can actually just take the varnish off so quickly and easily.
Yeah, I have to agree with that, like Gamvar. I mean, it's just an amazing varnish. What artists inspire you?
I'm lucky to be surrounded by a lot of really artistic friends that I get out and paint with and have a good time with. Also, I really, depending on what I'm doing, I really love looking at the tonalists and different work. Right now with Instagram and Pinterest, we're able to see artists from all over the world. I'm just amazed how many beautiful Ukrainian and Russian painters there are, how many amazing, all these artists that we just would hardly ever heard about. So I really enjoy seeing what other people are doing, and artists are so wonderful as a general rule, such amazing people that, you can have great discussions back and forth and just asking some questions and getting, nice feedback. I found that to be the case. Like I was saying, I've got a number of local artists, Scott Gallatley being one, you interviewed him recently, and a number of others that they're great because they'll give you honest feedback and you just learn so much from each other and just inspired by each other, just getting out there. I go through different phases where, I'm studying the tonalists and then I'll be studying the luminists. And it's just like, like when you find a favorite band and then you find out that band's favorite band, and then you find, down the rabbit hole you go of, who was their instructor, who did they study with, who did they hang out with, and California Impressionists, believe it or not, were, a big influence at certain stages of my career.
That's interesting. So how has your style changed over the years then? Were you always this luminous, or did you start off more traditional?
I was definitely always attracted to the more luminous work. Again, Maxfield Parrish always being a major influence, especially for young me. Even within like the California Impressionists, I will look to work that has more of the atmosphere, more of the glow, and a lot of times kind of even the softer edge quality. One of the main artists that I go back to all the time is Monet. I absolutely find magic within his work, even though I don't paint anything like him. My paint's pretty thin, often kind of brushy, scumbly. I find so much liberation in kind of how he was doing and his willingness to kind of layer and build up things. So there's so much we can take from so many artists. There's an artist I've been looking at a lot lately named Bato, B-A-T-O. His work is nothing like mine, but I find the liberation and just something about his work so amazing.
Yeah, it's a great time to be alive in a sense of being able to discover artists that you'd never ever see
right
in your lifetime, right?
long as you can remember to get off the computer and start.
That's right. And be inspired by the work and don't think it as a shot towards how bad your artwork is, right? I think a lot of us get trapped to that as well.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Let's see how that's looking so far. Try and
Yeah.
get the glare. But yeah, you can see I just kind of been splashing paint around. It's been a lot of fun. This would be oftentimes kind of how I, again, would reward myself a little bit with a painting well done. A lot of times I just have interesting, colors kind of left on the palette, and I can just kind of use those.
What kind of advice would you give yourself 5, 10 years ago?
For business, it would have been to collect people's information more, to start gathering up. Only during COVID did I really start focusing in on my own newsletter and email list. I've been lucky that I, still got a decent size, but I sure wish I'd have been doing that earlier. As far as painting, I would say that, paint what you like earlier. I've definitely chased the dollar like a lot of artists do when you're trying to make a living and trying to, it's tough when you've got a child and a wife and everything else, but people can tell and I can tell. And it's so much better to wake up and be excited to get into the studio than it is to, I got to go make the donuts, got to get up there and put in the time. But also on that same note, I do a lot of commissions and not all of them are 100% the thing I want to paint at that moment. And I find sometimes that makes me extra productive because I know I should be doing something. So I'll be painting away on my own projects.
Yeah, but I think a lot of artists say that about commissions. But I think what people don't understand is that even with a commission, there's always something in a commission you're gonna find that you're gonna love that keeps you going until the end at least.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah. It's not the worst thing you've ever done in your lifetime, is it?
And people come to me, not, nobody asks me to paint cats anymore. Or, you know what I mean? They know what they're getting. I mean, if they go to my website, they know that I'm a landscape painter for the most part, 90%, 99% even a landscape painter. They know that it's about sunset, sunrise, and different colors. And I will turn paintings down too. I have no problem turning down commissions now. And I will just tell them, not for me. I can suggest a couple other people that would kick this painting's butt and do a way better job than I would.
Do you ever get people coming by and saying they wanted this painted in a different style than yours? Or pretty much everyone that comes to you knows what your style is like, I assume then.
Right. I did have a client a long time ago that I did a lot of work for her, 16 paintings over the course of a year. She didn't want them all exactly the same. So yeah, she started kind of like, giving me books of artists that she liked in different subject matter and stuff. Luckily, she really, really liked Monet. So we had a great time talking about Monet. She actually traveled the world looking at Monet's paintings. And so we had great discussions about that. And I had a great time leaning in towards some of that a little bit more because, again, it was an excuse to use more paint, to be more painterly. So like you said, it was a challenge. I could have said no. I could have just done 10 paintings for her, not 16.
Yeah.
It was a pursuit and a path that I was willing to go down with her.
Now, on the flip side, though, what is the best piece of advice you have been given?
So I was at a Scott Christensen workshop. I'm sure everybody knows who he is, famous landscape painter in Idaho. And my piece of advice is not actually from him. It was from a lady standing behind me while we were watching a demo. And she said, and I'm sure you've all heard it before, but this is the first time I ever heard it, was values do all the work, colors get all the credit. And that really, that she said that to me at the right time. It had been right after I was doing all those plein air black and white paintings. And that's really stuck with me, is that nobody ever tells me, I love your painting and I want to buy it because of the value or the underlying structure. But that's 90% of the painting. The colors, they get the credit, and they sell it, if it matches their couch or whatever, their tile in their bathroom, whatever it is. I get it, totally get it. So
I think that's an excellent piece of advice. And it's interesting that you said that you were ready to hear it. And I find when I went to workshops a long time ago, I could miss 90% of the stuff and I'd have one gem out of that workshop. Everyone else didn't get that same out of it, the workshop. You were ready at that time to hear it and have it soak in.
That is so important. Yeah, that is exactly right. And I actually preface my workshops that I teach with that is, you know what, if you get one or two, three big things, one big thing that really alters how you work and becomes part of your thing, it's completely worth it.
Yeah, 100%.
You're not going to get all the hundreds of things I'm going to be spouting out at you. And it's,
Yeah, and that's why variety is great. Take as many workshops as you can by qualified instructors, and eventually you'll build up such a massive knowledge that painting will become so much easier.
Oh, not what I say. No, I say take all your workshops from me. And eventually,
that's probably the smart way to do it.
I'm just kidding.
Oh, man. Now, here's a really great question because we've never had this asked before. How do you determine your pricing per painting?
By the square inch.
Caveat, especially as a beginner. Would you suggest $1 a square inch, 50 cents a square inch?
Oh, you literally want me to tell you how much to
Well,
charge?
maybe they are. I'm kind of just I'm not asking how much you charge per inch, but for a beginner, how would someone go about pricing their work?
Here's my price structure right here. It's very mathematical. It starts off pretty expensive by the square inch and gets pretty darn cheap. So,
Well, the larger you go, the price per square inch kind of drops a little bit too, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, completely drops. Yeah, it starts off at approximately $6 to $7 per square inch and drops down to $2 per square inch when you get into the big boys.
Yeah, well, it has to, right? Otherwise, it's just astronomical.
Yeah, I mean, I wish it didn't have to, but I still love painting the big paintings and everything else, and the little paintings. And then I also, will sometimes charge or price them like for the sketches or for the quick little things like I just did there, these fun ones. And there's definitely a lot of people who actually really like to buy these more tonalist, fun little quick sketches that I do. I think there's maybe a couple people on the line here who have some of those. Yeah, they'll generally be a little less because they're a little quicker.
For a beginner, would you have any advice at all? Kind of where to start, what to look at?
You have to go into galleries and be honest and kind of price accordingly. Make sure you're not losing money. Figure out what you're worth per hour.
And kind of work back from that, eh? That's a good way.
It's so amazing how many artists are like, okay, they get into the show or get into the gallery. Right off the top, you got 50% taken. You've paid for the frame. You got to take that out. You got the canvas, you got the paint, and they forget about their own darn time.
Yeah.
Just, now they're paying themselves 50 cents an hour. Maybe because you're learning and you don't want to have a stockpile of paintings. It's okay for a little bit, but also you want to be respectful to other artists. You don't want to be, the cheapest one just to make a sale and not make any money yourself because you're shooting other artists in the foot by taking prospective buyers from them.
Yeah. I like that piece of advice though about worrying about paying yourself for your work, because I think a lot of artists, what they do is they price their work per square inch based on material or whatever, and they figure it out, but then they forget that they just spent like 6 hours working on this. So calculating that in, they're down to 50 cents an hour.
Yeah. And
right?
What about all the paintings that didn't work that it took, all the piles of discarded paintings it took to get to that painting?
Good point. Absolutely.
We're not paying a doctor for their time. We're paying them for their schooling.
Yeah, and their experience, right, over time. Yeah. That's a good piece of advice. I'm going to have to use that.
Yeah, it helps soften the blow a little bit when people are like, you must be very famous, and they don't know what paintings, are valued and everything else. Yeah. And, or if they ask, how long did that take you? I generally am hesitant to say I just knocked that out in 45 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely, right.
And that painting's not done. Don't get me wrong.
I hear what you're saying though. Yeah, sometimes you just have a plein air piece like a 8x10 or 6x8 or whatever that just comes together so fast.
And those are the best oftentimes.
Yeah, and you can't charge $50 for those, even though you just spent 15, 20 minutes on them. I mean,
what I tell, again, my students a lot of time is I love painting. I hate fixing. A lot of the time painting can take, weeks, months, even, you know what I mean? Because you're fixing it. You're and it's not fun anymore. You're not in love with the painting anymore. You can't charge more because you spent months on a painting that wasn't working. Whereas one of my very favorite paintings right here, this is one I won't sell. It's not a wonderful, amazing painting or anything, but in this is so much loose brushwork, so many things that I love and would like to pursue more.
Yeah.
That painting took probably 15 minutes, but it's priceless to me.
Yeah.
And I have a bunch of plein air ones from travels and different things like that. In fact, when we got back from our trip, the first painting I sold, I ended up calling up the nice lady who bought it. It was a 9x12 and telling her, you can have any painting in my studio if I can have that painting back.
You're kidding me. Holy shit.
She was nice. She only took a 16x20.
No doubt she could have taken some of your bigger ones, eh?
Yeah, probably. I don't know how. Yeah, but she's a sweetheart, and I don't regret that. I regret the sale, but I don't regret that trade at all.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic.
It was an amazing moment. I was on these rocks on the ocean and the waves were splashing and hitting me, and it was sunrise, and I was in Spain, and everything just as a magical moment. And as soon as I sold the painting, I was like, yeah, that memory, that painting's worth more to me because I have those memories.
Yeah, so. Yeah. Well, it's amazing what the memories come flooding back. 2 or 3 years, you look at a plein air painting, you remember exactly what you're doing, what the weather was like, what the smell was like.
Mosquito bites, everything.
Yeah, like how terrible it was, how fantastic it was. It's just quite amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah. This, again, when I was out doing that sunrise painting this last week, was 100 and a couple degrees, so hot, and the wind was blowing and it just felt like a hairdryer on you all day. We went to a couple beautiful spots and it was just too hot. So we went to a much less beautiful spot amongst these trees right next to a really cold creek. And we were in and out of that water every 15 minutes. And that's what I'm going to think of when I see those paintings. You know,
Absolutely.
is that awesome, just swimming with friends, drinking cold beer and painting on a bank, not beautiful scenes, not everything else, but yeah.
That's fantastic. And with that, that's an excellent story to end on. Thank you very much, Michael, for being part of this. Thanks for letting me interviewing. Thanks for penning and giving us all your wise wisdom. I thought it was a wonderful interview. Thank you.
I really appreciate it. You guys were awesome. Thank you for the great questions. And Michael, I really appreciate all your time and for reaching out and making this happen.
Absolutely. Anytime, man. And again, his web address is michaelorwick.com. You can find him on Instagram. Just tag Michael_Orwick. And lastly, you can find more information about Artful Minds at artfulminds.ca. With that, thank you very much, everybody.
Goodbye, Canada. Have a good one.
Take care, man. Cheers.